So today you once again find me at the Museum of Welsh Life here just outside of Cardiff, and today I'm going to talk about vlogging lenses. Not because I vlog per se. I guess what this really is a video about a selection of wide-angle lenses you can use to film your own face. I don't think anyone really wants to watch me shovel cake into my face, but it's an area I'm quite interested in. Obviously I use these sorts of lenses, and for some strange reason I currently own 4 of them, because it's been somewhat of a journey getting to a point where I've found a lens that works for me. And that's the thing, is finding one that suits your use case. But I'm currently filming myself with my choice. See if you can figure out what it is as I wander around and try and film using 4 different lenses. These videos usually turn out quite interesting, but it's a hassle. Really, I need an additional 3 cameras, but I don't think I can swing that.
And here are today's competitors: the Lumix 18 1.8, the Lumix 20-60 f3.5 to 5.6, the kit lens for a lot of their cameras, the Lumix 14-28 f4 to 5.6, and the Sigma 16-28 f2.8.
Today is going to prove to be somewhat challenging to film on because it is raining on and off. And as much as this camera and all of these lenses are well weather sealed, microphones are not, and that's very annoying. I still haven't figured out an ideal solution for this, but I am working on it. Might be some sort of lapel mic system, I guess. It's going to be a challenge. Not the only challenge though, because true to form, I always forget something when I'm going to do a video, and today I forgot the filter adapter rings to put my ND filter on 2 of the lenses. It's going to be an interesting challenge. They may have to be used indoors. I've just got some rain right in my eye. It's down.
And just for reference in this video, all the lens testing is being done on the Panasonic S5 IIX.
Okay, so for a quick low light test, I'm inside a rather dark pavilion, although it is somehow still windy. And this is currently on the 18mm f1.8. I'm filming at 6K open gate with the standard IBIS settings on standard electronic stabilization. And we're going to see how they each compare. So I'm going to use each lens at its brightest aperture on its widest setting and hold it hopefully in the same position. But this lens is very, very good in situations like this when you don't have much light to work with. This is now the 20-60 at f3.5, ISO 2500, and this is the angle that you can get. The sun's starting to come out again, so I think the ISO numbers are going to be fairly irrelevant. Okay, and this is the 14-28 at f4, currently ISO 1250, that's just because the sun has come back out again, so that's largely irrelevant. But this lens is very interesting because it's very wide, but it is harder to use in low light situations because of that fairly dark maximum aperture. And this is the Sigma 16-28 at f2.8. So currently the ISO is up over 2000 as the sun's gone in again, but it is a strength of this lens. It's not quite as bright as the 18 f1.8, but it is a constant 2.8 aperture, and you have the flexibility of having a zoom. So I think in low light work, this is a good compromise between the brightness but inflexibility of the prime and the problems you're going to face with things like a maximum f4 aperture.
And here's all 4 lenses together. This is the uncropped version because I shot these in the open gate mode, so you can see the full size of the image and you can see just how much wider the 14-28 is.
One additional consideration when it comes to choosing a lens is how close you need to be able to hold it to your face. So if it's going to be a bit heavier, you're really going to need to close up a little bit, especially with your elbow, so that you can better support the weight and you can hold it for a longer period of time. Holding your arm out like this is very unstable and it's fairly uncomfortable. You're not going to want to do that for long. So having a wider angle lens is quite beneficial here, especially when it comes to using the electronic stabilization in the newer cameras. It does crop in. Having more to work with in order to crop in means that you do have more flexibility in that regard. So with this 16-28, I can keep my elbow quite tight into my body. It's comfortable for longer. But one thing to keep in mind is even if it's cropping in, it is going to exaggerate your facial features because it's a wider angle lens. So if you're particularly sensitive about the size of your nose, might not be the best choice. Maybe less stabilization and a slightly longer lens might be your choice. Now, when you think vlogging lenses, you probably think wide-angle lens. That's what I think usually. But what happens if you want to take B-roll? Do you want to have to swap lens every time? No, not really. It's quite annoying, and this is obviously going to be a bit of a problem with the 18mm prime. So what I'm going to do, at a summer house apparently, I'm going to stick the camera on a windowsill of it, and we're going to see what the best reach you can get out of each lens is. Now this sounds like a bit of a stupid example, but there's a trick with these cameras that makes the wider angle lenses more flexible, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so as you can see, I have the Sigma 16-28 set up at 28mm, and I wouldn't exactly call it a close-up of that statue. This is my C1 setup, this is my default movie setup, but if I turn that off and we swap to C2, which are the exact same settings, but at 50p, you can see we now have a 2x crop. This is really quite useful because a lot of people describe the crop aspect of the higher frame rates on this camera as a downside, but I see it as an upside for everyday videography. Yes, you can't do super wide angle slower motion, but it does make these wide angle, more compact lenses more generally useful, and that's a really nice thing to have. Now, there are a couple of lenses that I haven't got, which are potentially even more interesting options. You've got the 16-35 f4 from Panasonic, which I believe to be somewhat heavy, so that's why I've never picked it up, and it was also very expensive. And there's the new 18-45, the new very compact lens that should have been the kit lens for the S9. That's an interesting option. I would be curious to try that, albeit it's got quite a dark maximum aperture, the darkest of all of these options. So that would be an interesting option, but the added flexibility provided by these cameras make all of them very viable options. And that's kind of interesting to me. Okay, I'm just going to use the 18mm as a bit of an example. So this is a f4.5, which of all the options available on the L mount is the darkest maximum aperture on that 18-45. I think it's an 18-45. So if I then drop it to f4, this is now at ISO 2000 in this dark area, which really isn't that bad. It's quite overcast and I'm under some trees, so for outdoor stuff this is very, very viable. And then if we go down to 2.8, which, if you don't know too much about ISO, it's actually double the amount of light. And you can see the difference it's made. It's now at 1250, and if we go down to 1.8, we go all the way down to ISO 640, which means that something in this is probably overexposing a little bit. But you can also see the very nice bokeh behind me. This is a very nice lens for that. I have never seen the Italian garden here before. That's new. Okay, I'm just taking shelter from the rain, which is pouring down again. It's intermittent today, so it's not too bad, but a good example of the 18mm again in lower light usage. It's very, very handy. Having that 1.8 is really nice, and it does have a beautiful effect. It is not great if you want to demonstrate something. It's like, oh, look at that lovely hedge. Well, you can't see it because it's just a blurry mess. But it looks great and it's really nice. And I think there is a use case for this lens for outdoor vlogging sort of setups. I think if you have a 2-lens setup, so if you had this and say 24-70 or something like that, everyday useful lens, this would be a really nice setup. It's the lightest weight lens, and it gives you something extra again over an f2.8 lens. It's an interesting use case for it. As a flexible all-day vlogging lens, yeah, it's the least flexible, but there are advantages to it. And I really like this lens. It's been my office video lens since I bought it. I really liked the field of view of it, the angle. I love the effect of it. I think it's got a very pretty look to it. Now, when I'm trying to travel lighter, I tend to only take one camera. I just take the S5 II and use it for both video and photos. This is great up on mountains, for example. But that makes your lens choice a bit trickier, I suppose. Do you pick one lens that does both, or do you pick a couple of lenses? That's really going to be down to you. But the 20-60 is a very good lens. Just for photography as well. It's very flexible for landscapes. It's a very useful one to have with you. And I've taken some of my favourite landscape photos on it, ones I took in Switzerland a couple of years ago. For days like today, it is a very flexible option. If you're just going for a day out and you want to be able to take some video of yourself whilst taking some photos without having to swap your lens over and over again. Well, a conclusion then, because I've got 17 minutes to get out of the museum before it closes, and it's about to rain again. Which of the 4 lenses that I own and the 6 total would I pick or have picked? Well, congratulations if you guessed it. It probably wasn't that hard. It's the Sigma 16-28 f2.8. I only picked this up recently, but I picked it up specifically to replace the other 3 lenses that I own, because I was using the 18 indoors, the 14-28 outdoors, and the 20-60 if I wanted a single lens for video and photos all day. It was kind of starting to get quite annoying having so many different options, and quite expensive as well. It's a lot of money kept in lenses that I don't necessarily need. So I picked this up instead, and I'm going to trade in the other 3, which will free up some extra money to A, pay for this, and also to buy something else I totally don't need. But it's the most sensible compromise for me. It's good indoors in low light. It's a little bit wider even than the 18, and it's perfectly capable outside as well. It's also a great landscape photography lens. It's very optically good, so that's a really nice feature to it. I will miss the 18mm most of all of the rest, but it's quite a niche use case lens, and it's quite an expensive lens at that. I think new is about £800. So just keeping it around for that rare use doesn't really make sense to me. So this was my choice. What would be yours? Please do let me know down in the comments below. I'd be really curious to know. And thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, assuming all of South Wales doesn't wash away in the floods. I'm not going to bet on it. See you next time.